Good morning, everybody. This is Kathy L. Murphy, the Pulpwood Queen, and I am here in East Texas in my little cabin in the woods, Murphy's Law, and I have a very special guest today. I have this fabulous pet tiger that lives at my home and have been living with for almost 20 years, and I brought him into the picture because we have an author here today that has a story that if you have not read this book, it is the perfect book to read during the COVID-19 social pandemic crisis, because it takes you away to the place that I've been wanting to go ever since I discovered the films of Bollywood, India. And the book is, here we go, All the Way to the Tigers. It's a memoir by Mary Morris. And Mary, good morning to you. How are you today?
Good morning, and thank you for bringing your tiger with.
Well, I'm going to put my tiger down because he's kind of heavy and it's time for his breakfast. So I'm going to put him down. But I'm so excited to be here with you because when Carolyn Leavitt, who is my dear, dear Pulpwood Queen friend, she was a Pulpwood Queen author of the year for her book, Pictures of You. She told me about you and connected us. And I want the audience to know that you are an author that everybody needs to read. And I'm just going to, before we begin, just give a little bit of your background, because you're the author of numerous works of fiction, including novels Gateway to the Moon, The Jazz Palace, A Mother's Love, and House Arrest. But you also have nonfiction book, which I've got to read this, Declare. Nothing to Declare, Memoirs of a Woman Traveling Alone. Well, this speaks to my wanderlust heart, because this is something that I've armchair traveled most of my life. Growing up in Kansas, I lived for a while in California. Now I'm in Texas. And, you know, I started the Pulpwood Queens because I wanted to share these armchair travel stories. But you're also the recipient of the Rome Prize in Literature and the 2016 Ainsville Wolf Book Award for Fiction, and you live normally in Brooklyn, New York. So welcome to the wonderful world of the Pulpwood Queen. So
thank you very much, Kathy.
Now I talked to you recently, and I know you're not in Brooklyn. So let's hear what you're doing during this social distancing time.
Well, it's a little complicated, and it's sort of the way my life goes. And if you've read All the Way to the Tigers, you know that often I think we live more in the detours than in the itineraries that we plan. So this is definitely a detour, not an itinerary. Just the background, I had planned to take this year off from teaching. I had this book coming out. There was a big book tour planned, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, COVID happened, and our daughter has a cabin, a trapper's cabin in the Catskills, in a pretty remote place, okay, fairly remote. And when COVID happened, we live in Brooklyn, and I realized that she was going to be up there with her husband throughout her pregnancy, and we would never see them. It just was going to be impossible. And this is the bizarre part, Kathy. This is kind of how my life kind of goes weirdly. So I'm working on a book about Jamaica.
Oh.
Okay, and one of my research people, his daughter, who's become a friend of mine, lives in Portugal. So she's a Jamaican who lives in Portugal. Right. And she coincidentally has a cabin on the same road as our daughter. Just
no way.
Yeah, no way. That's what we thought. I thought, no way. And when her dad said to me, she said, oh, Anna Ruth has a cabin. Oh, where's the cabin? Oh, it's in blah, blah, blah. Oh, what's it? And I started realizing where it was and what road it was on. Anyway, we've been in this cabin since April, and we're just 20 minutes from our daughter, and we've been grandparenting and co-parenting. And so we've really been there for her and her family. And then we've been back to Brooklyn. But, you know, let's just put it this way, Kathy. I was going to be in Paris for the month of October. And today, just before this before our interview, I picked up a wetsuit because
oh my God.
I'm not going to be eating oysters and champagne in Paris, but there's a reservoir where I can swim in 50 degrees. So, you know, that's life right now, right? So here I am.
Well, you know, that's the wonderful thing about this book, because for me, being this armchair traveler through my reads, I found that in real life, and this is a real life story about what happened to you, we often have a goal and plan in mind that goes haywire. You know, when I had my annual girlfriend weekend convention in January, we were all together like we do every year. None of us knew that we would all be sitting at home, you know, doing this. And so, what is wonderful about your book is that through life's weird, quirky detours like you had in this book, and then what happened to you, I'm going to have you talk about it. I don't want to give away any secrets, but what happened to you is really what happens to real people. And I think we need to understand that, you know, memoirs are important, because here you've written all these books and everything, but the story behind the story is what intrigues me. So I want to hear the story behind the story. So you said you were teaching. Where do you normally teach?
So I'm a tenured professor at Sarah Lawrence College
Oh my
in
gosh.
Rockville, New York.
See, I didn't know that. That's amazing.
So I'm a tenured professor. My students liken me to Indiana Jones because, you know, like he would teach archaeology or something and then go off on these crazy adventures. So I don't mind that association. I'm definitely good with that. So in 2008, I had a sabbatical, and it was the first sabbatical I'd had in 14 years where there wasn't a child at home.
Right.
So I was free. I was going to do whatever I wanted. Kathy, the world was my oyster. And I didn't have a book planned. And I thought, I'm just going to be a nomad. You know, I'll travel. Our daughter was in Ireland. My husband would join me some of the time. I was just going to go. Okay. The only thing I was worried about was jury duty, because I had been called up for jury duty, literally. And I was so worried I'd be put on a trial. And I spent weeks obsessing about jury duty. Anyway, on the very first day of my sabbatical, and the book pretty much begins with this, so I don't think I'm giving much away, I said to my husband, it was a beautiful day, let's go ice skating. And that was the beginning of my plans being completely and utterly derailed for months and months and months, and an incredible depression that sank over me. And, you know, I like to say to people, being in lockdown is actually my third house arrest, because the first time I was literally under house arrest in Cuba for a week. So literally I've been in house arrest. But then, you know, when I had my injury ice skating, I was at home for 3 months. And you know, and this was the person who was going to be a nomad, and I was going to go wherever I wanted. And instead, I was canceling plans on my couch. And it was very, very tough. I suppose I could segue into how I came to write the book, if you'd like me to talk about. Yes.
That would be perfect.
Okay. So it was extremely depressing. My beleaguered husband, I had a wheelchair that we named Duncan. I'm not really sure, but we had to give it a name. I hated the wheelchair. I hated being in the wheelchair. It was awful. And my husband worked on Sundays, which was very depressing to be home alone on Sundays. And so it was Easter Sunday, and I was reading Death in Venice. I teach a class called The Writer and the Wanderer. It's stories that happen.
Love to take that class.
It's a great class. It's a great class. And I make my students wander and write and keep journals and all that. Because to me, a journey can happen. A journey isn't necessarily getting on an airplane. A journey can happen, you know, in your neighborhood. Right. So anyway, I was reading Death in Venice because it's a story that happens during a journey. And of course, it was incredibly depressing. And I was already incredibly depressed and feeling sorry for myself. And I thought, I'm not in a good place, like, you know. And I came to a sentence in the book, Death in Venice, where Thomas Mann wrote, he would go on a journey not far, not all the way to the Tigers. And I'm non-weight bearing, sitting on my couch, leg raised, 2 surgeries, and I think to myself, I'm going to go all the way to the Tigers. It just was a sentence in a book. But that became the light in my tunnel. That's what I
a
said.
springboard to reading your book.
What?
What a springboard to reading your book. I love that. A sentence in another book inspired you to do this.
Yeah, exactly.
I
Exactly.
hope everybody's listening to that, because that is exactly the things that get me chills up and down my arms and my spine. So
And it was a book I wasn't even enjoying reading. I didn't even want to read it. You know, I was like, I was reading it because I sort of had to, and then all of a sudden it became something else. And then I loved the book. I mean, it's a great book. I was just extremely depressed.
And, you know, when you're extremely depressed, I've talked to a lot of people about this recently, about things that you do to get you out of your depression. For me, I had a hard time reading when this first happened because my mind was too busy. And so I started doing walks in the wood, because that's all I could do. I live in the woods, and so I started walking. And then I started picking up forest finds, which inspired me to do this collage that you're seeing behind me.
Oh, it's amazing.
I don't know if you can see it, but that's one of my works that I'm also an artist. But those little springboards can set your mind at rest and free. So, and that's what your book did for me, because I was having a hard time reading a book. Then I got your book and I could not put it down. Every page was a winner. And I know a lot about tigers. They're really beautiful, but they're also very scary. And there's been a lot of books about tigers that actually manhunt. So I thought, oh my gosh, she's brave. And the fact that you went to India, the one place that I'm just dying to go, I'm hoping that this will all be over so soon that can happen. So anyway, the story is amazing. So how long did it take you to actually, what was the process in writing this book?
So I never really know if something is going to be a book. I knew it would be a journey, but I didn't really know what it would be as a book. So I began to research tigers and read about tigers, and I learned a tremendous amount. And then I started to figure out where I could physically go to see tigers. We did a trip to Hong Kong and Thailand, but I wasn't able to see tigers in the wild there, and I couldn't afford to go to Siberia. I just didn't have the funding. But I was able to do a trip to India. So, excuse me. Sorry, getting over a little thing here.
Yes.
So I was able to do this trip to India. So I did the trip, and then I wrote what was basically a 400-page draft of this book that nobody wanted to publish. And Kathy, I need 1 minute. I need a second.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, she's getting to get a step to get the tickle out of her throat. I want the audience to know that for almost 7 years I've lived here, and 15 minutes away is Tiger Creek, which is a tiger rescue, and I've never been. Every time I drove back by it every day going to school at the University of Texas, because I went back to school, I think I've got to go there. I've got to go there. Well, now I'm so inspired from reading your book. I have a tiger rescue place 15 minutes from my house.
Oh my God.
So I am going to go and film going through it as a tie-in for reading your book, because you know, with this Tiger King show, which was crazy,
right?
Crazy. This is a legitimate place that takes in circus tigers. And
what's the name of the sanctuary?
It's Tiger Creek, and it's just literally 15 minutes away from me, just on the other side of I-20, between I-20 and Tiger
Creek. Okay.
And they have all kinds of things going on, and I've never been. So because of your book, I am definitely going. And it's so odd for me, because if there is any kind of a wild animal park or You know, I lived in San Diego. I used to go to the Wild Animal Park all the time, and the San Diego Zoo. I've been to, I think, pretty much zoos all over the country.
Right.
You know, I love animals, and I love the big cats. That's my
Well,
favorite.
you know, I think a lot of people they say to me like, "Oh, our tiger's going to be extinct." No, there's no chance that tigers are going to be extinct because, for example, in the U.S. and quite frankly, a lot of these are in Texas. There are over 12,000 tigers in private collections. A lot of them are used on large pieces of land for hunting. I mean, it's really a horrible thing, but there's a wonderful tiger sanctuary in Ohio, and I'm happy to know about the one near you. And a lot of them take these tigers from these places. The real issue are tigers in the wild.
Right.
I mean, the physical tiger, that the beautiful creature we know, will not go extinct. But a tiger, so a male tiger needs 100 square kilometers of territory for himself. One tiger, 100 square kilometers. I mean, imagine if a person needed 100 square kilometers. It's impossible, right? So, you know, how do we preserve the habitat of tigers in the wild? And, you know, why do we do that? And contrary to Joe Exotic and the Tiger King bizarreness, yeah, you know, tigers need to be, they're apex solitary predators. Yes. And they need to be free, and they need to be in reserves. And India's done a fantastic job. Their numbers have gone way up. So.
Well, I've done books that talked about the elephants and how people poach the, you know, or the poachers go for their tusks. I've done lots of books about things like that. So it's wonderful to have a book like yours because it makes us more aware of that. We're on this planet as not to do away everything else in the world, but to work out a way that we can all work in this world together. Absolutely. And, you know, and I think we've finally realized that, you know, cutting down the forests and clear cutting land and taking away animals' habitat and is not the way to go. But, and I, you know, I have a really good friend that even worked for the Jane Goodall in Africa that, you know, had amazing stories of, you know, working with all the chimpanzees and gorillas and things. Right. But back to your book, this book is truly one that will springboard you into wanting to read more of your books. And it also is it's really a journey. So when you travel, and I especially want to read your traveling alone because I like to travel and I don't mind going by myself. Right. But when you do this, are you journaling? Are you recording? Are you taking photos? How are you documenting things so that when you get back home?
Well, first of all, this is the fifth and I think final book in a series that I've done about being a solo woman on the road.
Wow.
So each book is about solo travel. Yeah, I don't, you know, I have a great partner and a wonderful marriage, and we travel together, but we'll go to Paris. We won't go to some of the places that I will go to, because for me, it's a totally different, that experience. You know, I made the decision many, many years ago when I wrote Nothing to Declare that being that women move through the world differently than men. And that if I was really going to have a true travel experiences that I wanted to have, there had to be nothing between me and the world. But to answer your larger question, so when I'm traveling, I always have a good physical journal with me. And so I always have a very small notebook in my pouch, where I keep my phone, my keys, and all that. Very small notebook. And then I'm writing down everything in this small notebook. And then I always have a small backpack where I have a journal, a physical journal. And so I'm, you know, for example, when I'm with my guides, I'll be scribbling down things they're saying in the little notebook. And then if I have a little pause, I'll start to transcribe it into my journal, because there it's more worked out as scenes and moments and feelings and things like that. or at the end of the day, I'll go back to my room wherever I'm staying, and I will take my notes, and I'll do them like that. I do travel with a laptop, but I don't write on it, and I don't depend on it, because there are too many places where you're not going to have electricity, theft and those kinds of things. I just travel with it for email and for connection. I have used my journals literally as collateral to get out of situations. For example, I once wanted to rent a boat in Prague on the Vltava River, and I didn't have an ID with me. And I gave the guy my journal, and he said, okay, and he knew I'd be back for it. So he gave me a boat.
Oh, wow.
So, and there have been some other interesting situations. I once left a journal. I've never lost one, but I left one once on a train in Europe. And as I was walking away, some young man ran off the train, running just as the train was leaving, and I kissed him. I just kissed him, and he jumped back on the train, and he said, thank you. So they're very precious to me. I have about 77 of them. I've kept them since I was a girl.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah, and I go through a couple a year, and I have them all. So really everything I write begins in my journals, in my physical journals. I have it here, but I have to actually get up and get it. So I'm not going to get up again.
When you journal, do you also draw? Do you draw anything?
I do.
Yes.
I do. So my journals they're scrapbooks. They're places where I draw. I do watercolors. If you go to my website, www.marymorris.net, you can look at some artwork. It's in process, so it's only a little bit of, but I do usually a watercolor every other day. They really ground me. I have no idea what I'm doing. Very good watercolorists tell me that I'm a terrific watercolorist, and I have literally no idea what I'm doing. So, but I think that's how we should do everything. I think we should, if you don't try. I was reading Steve Jobs the other day, and he said that the difference between successful people and people who are not successful is successful people just aren't afraid of failing. And I've never really been afraid of making a mistake. Like, that's why I speak several languages, because I really don't care if I make mistakes in them. I let people correct me. That's fine.
So what do you speak?
I speak pretty fluent French, Italian, and Spanish. Spanish I learned in the streets. French I learned at school. Italian I learned also on the street, pretty much. Yeah. I speak some German, and I can get by in Hebrew a little bit.
Really?
And a very little bit of Russian.
Wow. Any Hindi? And do you speak any Hindi at all?
Not a word, but I in fact, they really nod their heads all the time, and
you never know if they mean yes or no.
You know if it means it's okay or it's not okay, or what does it mean? But no Hindi.
I am teaching myself, because I found a place online, and first learning words. And I've watched so many Indian films now that I picked up sukara, and I picked up all these words, and I just thought, I need to know what they mean, nay, 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 and all these things. And I'm working with one of my professors from college who's from India on a book. And I would love to have conversations with her in her native language. And when I go, I want to be able to, I thought when I went to France that because I had 4 years of high school French and 2 years in college, that I would be fine.
No way.
No way. There's so many different accents. You've got, I had a Belgian teacher which taught French. It's so hard, but languages fascinate me, but I'm a collector of words. So, and I have a friend that's Lakota. So I'm learning Lakota, which is a native language. I'm trying to learn. I like to learn.
Yeah.
And I think the thing about your books that's important is you're a lifelong learner, and you're also an educator, a teacher. And I would love to take your class. Do they do online classes at all?
We can talk about it. I do private classes. I do master classes. So, it is something that I do. I have a master class right now that's made up of that's all former students of mine, but I've been thinking about doing a class of people I don't know, because I always do people I do know. But I want to go back to something about languages that you said, because I read once, I read a lot. There was a statistic I read once, that they've only found one thing that actually makes a difference in terms of people getting Alzheimer's or dementia that helps, and that is learning a language. So, you know,
everybody, are you listening?
You people late-ish in life, you've always wanted to learn Spanish, you've always wanted to learn Hindi, Lakota, whatever. You know, see, if you think about it, it opens up a different linguistical part of the brain. So it really does make sense as a kind of brain exercise. So one of the things I do every week is I call my friends in Italy so I can practice my Italian.
Oh, I've gone to Italy many times. I love it. In fact, my best friend, that's what she does, is she takes tours to Italy. She takes Americans to Italy and all over Europe. And she's the one that she has a store gallery in just down the road from me, and she's the one that houses all my art. So we just have so many similar tastes, and we both love to read. So if it hadn't have been for this book club, I never would have met you, never would have met her. I never would meet all these people that are taking me around the world with books.
Right.
So the wonderful thing about your book is this year, because we're an international book club, and the fact that we have chapters and members in 15 foreign countries.
Wow.
I used to be in Rotary International. I was president and district publicity marketing person for a district, and we always had exchange programs. And so like I had some Thailand teachers come, educators, and I went to my shop and they fell in love with blonde hair, because I have all these hair pieces and wigs. So before they left, they all had the hot pink t-shirts, the blonde wigs on, and they started a Pulpwood Queen chapter in Thailand. And that's just kind of how it's, you know, Scotland, England, New Zealand, you know, Canada, Mexico, of course. But I've had exchange students from Germany and Japan. And I think that when you get out of your comfort zone and you face the fear of traveling alone or do some of those things, you find actually an inner strength that gets you through all life's little, you know, flobbles or you know, the social distancing COVID thing. It gets you through that. And so, and nothing is more entertaining to me than reading books. So your book is actually going to be, I'm doing 12 books of the year, which I've always done, and then I'm doing 12 international reads. And you're going to be one of my first International of the Month reads, because I think people all over the world, not just here, need to read this story. Because if you grew up in a very small place, like, did you grow up in Brooklyn, Mary?
No, I grew up in Highland Park, Illinois, which is a small place.
Now, when you grow up in a small place and you never get out of it, you have a different mindset.
Right.
But you become a lifelong learner, and then you learn to travel and go. All of a sudden, if you look at the bigger picture of life, the world is a much better place than you ever possibly imagined. I just recently traveled back home to Kansas.
Right.
And you know, we didn't have a bookstore. We had a Carnegie library that I lived in. And, you know, it was a very small town, and now it's pretty much a ghost town. So by reading these books, it has expanded my world. I've had a wonderful life, a wonderful life. And reading these books can change everything for people. So if you're having a bad day, if you're home, you know, order this book. You can go to bookshop.org and help independent bookstores all over the country by purchasing Mary Morris's book. And you can also check out all of her other ones we're going to marymorrisauthor.net.
www.marymorris.net.
Okay, marymorris.net.
All the shop things are there also.
Right.
Can I say something about small town growing
Yeah.
up in a small town, Kathy? Would that be?
Yeah, absolutely. It's your,
Okay,
this is your
no,
time.
because, I've been thinking a lot about my mother lately. And my mother was a woman, and I've written about her quite a bit in this book. Not in such a positive way, but I mean, she was a complicated person and very talented, but I mean, she was a person who should have had a fashion line, not someone who should have been in suburban Illinois raising a couple kids and making Halloween costumes essentially for her children. That was one of her things, and and she quilted. I mean, she was very, very gifted. And she had a degree in fashion from the Art Institute of Chicago that she got in the 1930s, but the Depression happened and her father would not let her complete her degree. So my mother was very much a frustrated artist. And I just want to share this one anecdote because to me, this has formed everything. So growing up in this small town of Illinois. My mother's a Francophile. She names our first dog Renoir. She hasn't been anywhere. She hasn't traveled anywhere. She insists that the public schools teach French, and they all look at her like she's an insane person, and she will not give up on them teaching French. Anyway, when I was this little girl, maybe I was 5 years old, my parents were invited to a suppressed desire ball, and you were supposed to go as your secret wish, okay? So, people who were invited, it was a ball. It was a big deal. There were, 100 people invited. And my mother went into this kind of trance-like state. I've written about this in Nothing to Declare. I don't think it's in All the Way to the Tigers. And she kind of went into a trance and she came back home with blue taffeta and fishnet and all these travel brochures and a mannequin. She had a tailor's thing.
Yeah.
I was afraid of it, actually. It was kind of scary, the basement. But I'd go down late at night and she'd be cutting things out of these travel brochures. And she would say to me, Mary, where should the Taj Mahal go? Where should I put the Great Wall of China? And I mean, I thought she was bonkers. Like, I thought she'd lost her,
Oh, this is so me. This is so me.
And,
okay.
Right. Meanwhile, my father didn't have a costume, right? And he was very handsome. They used to call them Greer and Carey. So he was kind of named after Cary Grant. He was extremely handsome. No costume, but he was totally bald. Anyway, unbeknownst to my mother, who had been bothering him about this, he said to his barber, I don't know what to do. I'm supposed to have a costume. I don't have a costume. And the barber said, well, why don't I make you a toupee and you can go as a man with hair? So the barber made my father this very glamorous toupee that he wore for the rest of his life. He lived to be 103. And he got a tuxedo. And the night of the ball, I looked up at the stairs and there was my father in this tuxedo with a head of hair, just gorgeous. And there was my mother, and she had this taffeta blue ocean of skirts that had all of the places she longed to go sewn into it. And she'd made this blue bodice, and she made a little globe of a hat that kind of moved on her head. And the thing that I wrote in Nothing to Declare and that I've held on to my whole life is that instead of seeing the world, my mother became it.
That is the most beautiful story. You've got me in tears. That's the most beautiful story I've ever heard. Oh my gosh. Do you have a photograph of that?
One day I'm going to go through my whole house and yes, somewhere I have that photograph.
When you find that photograph,
I will scan it and send it to you.
I would love to see it because that is the most incredible story ever.
Right.
You know what?
It made me decide to travel. It made me want to be, I didn't want to make the costume. I wanted to go. Whatever. Yeah.
I have a similar thing. My mother wanted to be an actress. I mean, she really did not want to be a mother. I mean, she told us in no uncertain terms, her calling was to become an actress. But as a child, she gave me the strangest Christmas gifts, 1 year for Christmas, I got a globe, which is an odd thing to get when you're in the 3rd grade, a globe, because what do you do with a globe? Well, now, if you look, I collect them. I have them all over my house. She also signed me up for the encyclopedias, children's encyclopedias, full color. I wallpapered one of my walls with, I found a damaged set. And because I read those books from cover to cover.
Right.
These seeds that our parents plant with us, their unfulfilled desires and dreams end up becoming your dream.
That's so beautiful.
Because, you know, I am a tomboy. I relate to Scout from To Kill a Mockingbird. I related to Tarzan because I felt abandoned as a child, and I didn't want to be Jane. I wanted to be Tarzan. So I'd swing out of my tree with my dog below pretending he was Cheetah. And, but it's ironic to me because when my sisters and I all started college at the same time. So my mother told me that, you know, after 2 years, I was going to have to fund my own way through school. And I did not know how to do that. I was a lifeguard all through high school and college. And, you know, it was years later that I even knew you could make a living as a lifeguard, like Baywatch or whatever. But I couldn't figure out what to do. But I had a friend take me to a beauty school to get a haircut because they were $3 back then, which is a deal. And I watched this girl cut her hair and I thought, I could do that. That's an art form. So I worked 4 jobs that summer after my sophomore year in college, and I earned the money to go to beauty college. And I think it's very ironic, this tomboy girl became a person that became a beauty professional when it was never my desire to, you know, glam up and do all this stuff. But now it's such a part of me that I'm almost like 2 personalities. I'm the one that will pull on the ball cap and ponytail and go walking in the woods. And then for things like this, I actually throw my hair up, put on a little makeup, and, you know, do this. It's
Sweetheart, I'm about to put on my wetsuit and get into the reservoir after we do this. So there
you know
you go.
what? That is just the most amazing thing in the world, because when I lived in California, I just watched so many Gidget movies growing up. I just ran into the ocean and I froze my ass off because it was hotter than hell. And I had no idea the ocean was so cold. So I totally get the wetsuit thing because I never swam ever again in the ocean after that first experience. I would go, but it was just too cold for me, but I didn't know about wetsuits. So that's amazing. So how long do you swim for?
Well, so this is the thing, you know, as I said to you a little earlier, you know, we're supposed to be in Paris eating oysters, and I bought a wetsuit instead. So my daughter and I, we go to this reservoir a few times a week, but it's freezing where we are. We're in the Catskills.
Oh my God.
So she got a wetsuit and then she made me get one. So mine just arrived. So we'll see. We'll see. I hope I can get into it. But anyway, you know what? I just want to say, kind of going back to the book a little bit, is that sometimes the detour becomes the destination. You know, sometimes the thing that you know, and it's sort of what I try to say to people in this COVID moment. I try to wake up, like, as I said, this is my 3rd house arrest, right? The COVID one. And I try to wake up every day and say, what do I have to do? What do I want to do? And what can I do for somebody else? And I find if I fulfill those 3 things, even if they're small, you know, then I feel better. I feel that I've lived a fulfilled day, even though I miss all my friends and I miss going to the movies, and I'm trying to wonder if my grandson one day is going to say to me, Grandma, what were movies? Like, could you tell me what was popcorn? I don't know, you know, who knows? I mean, he'll know what popcorn is, but you know what I mean? Like,
yes,
I do. A crazy moment. And I think if whatever positivity, you know, you find things in the woods and you make art out of it. I mean, that's kind of what I think we're all doing. A very brief anecdote. There's a guy in my neighborhood who was an anthropology student at Yale, and he was really struggling and he had a nervous breakdown. He dropped out of Yale. There was a lot of pressure from his parents and everybody, and he couldn't handle it, couldn't do it. And he remembered that he used to love watching his mother make pickles. So when he was coming out of his nervous breakdown, he started pickling things. And now he's Mr. Pickle, and he pickles and sends all over the world, and he's incredibly successful, and he loves pickling. And I always love that story because I feel like, you know, if you're doing something that doesn't make you happy, like people say to me, oh, isn't writing hard? Isn't it a struggle? I love to write. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't do it. If you don't love something, why do it? Right?
Exactly.
Why make yourself do it? If it doesn't bring you pleasure, you know, why be with someone who doesn't make you happy? Why pursue something because you think you should or you have to? And this is a good time for all of us to take a little step back and say, what do I do that really brings me pleasure right now? And I think
brilliant. You're brilliant. I love everything about it. And you say no matter how small a gesture to help somebody. Let me tell you, you got me through COVID. I mean, this book really made me think about making every day important. If what I'm doing isn't important or bringing me joy, then I'm not going to do it. And sometimes I just spend a whole day watching Netflix, just watching movie after movie because it brings me joy. And sometimes I spend all day reading. Some days, this week, I've been in the studio just working madly. But gosh, you should do a life lesson book, Mary.
I'm thinking about doing a TED Talk, actually, or something like that. I've been thinking about something.
You should.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to think about it, but I've got to figure it out, and you know how to set it up and doing all that. So.
Oh, I watch TED Talks left and right. In fact, one of my authors, Johnny Bernhard, is getting ready to do one. And I have another author, Julie Cantrell, that did one. And when I'm not doing reading and art, I get on YouTube and I watch Yale Talks, Think. I watch all these different shows, but I want you to send me a message on your master classes, because I have so many author friends that this would be the funnest thing in the world for me. Cool. I would love to take that class.
And it's fun, you know, and I'm you know, I take 10 people, no more. You know, and I mean, I might take more under certain circumstances, but pretty much I'll do 10. I have 10 now. There was something I was going to say. Oh, I want to say something about the book, because it relates to just what we're talking about, you know, the writing of the Tiger book, which is that, you know, I said to you it was a 400-page book and no one would remember it. The first draft was 400 pages long. You earlier asked me about the process, and I couldn't publish it. And at one point I decided that I only wanted it to be about my accident, the tiger, and my family and my childhood. And so as I shrank it down from a 400-page book to 180 pages, I realized that, and this gets into sort of what we're talking about, is I wanted the book, at a certain point I decided I wanted the book itself to be a tiger, right? So here's the book, right? Okay, so it's 112 chapters, and that's because a tiger is a Rorschach test, and it's an even number of stripes. It's identical on either side. So it was really important to me to have it have an even number. And those little short chapters, you know, that are one sentence long, so those are stripes. And like, no literary critic is ever going to figure this out unless I tell them. But thinking of the book,
amazing.
Because I'm also a visual artist, so thinking of the book itself as a tiger helped me write it.
Yeah,
it gave form and function. It kind of pulled it together, and that was actually how I was finally able to write it. And I do want to say one other thing about process, because you're talking about your own art and the whole visual question. So this book has 4 threads, right? There's my accident, there's the India, there's childhood, and then there's sort of tiger lore. And I couldn't keep it all straight. It was impossible. And also, I didn't know what order things were in. There was no order. So what I did, and this is a technique I use, I've used it before, is I print the different threads on different colored paper. So my accident was all on white paper because it happened in winter. And all the tiger stuff was on yellow paper. and childhood was blue because it was sort of in the past. And then tiger lore was, I think, purple. And so I got a great big table at a friend's. It was a ping pong table, actually. I took the net off their ping pong table. And I moved the pieces around until I liked the colors. So when I liked the color pattern.
You are an artist.
Yeah. So for example, the book did not begin with India when I first wrote it. It began with my accident. And there was a moment where I realized it had to be about the tiger. It had to begin with a tiger. And also in terms of like the book is a tiger, like the tiger had to be everywhere in the book. So.
Wow. You
It's a little crazy, but it's my process.
It's one of the things I learned when I went back to college, and I've been to 7 universities and colleges in 43 years. It took me to graduate. But one thing I learned when I went back was that they say in art, you know, everything's been done, but you have to learn how to make it your own.
Right.
And that's exactly what you have done, Mary Morris. You have made this book your own. You've made it a work of art. Interestingly enough, I Married Adventure is done in animal print too. And they only did 700 first editions, and I have 2 of them. I have 2 of them. And why I saw the book, the first one I bought was in an antique store in Jefferson, Texas. I saw it because it had the stripes. And I grabbed it. It was $10. And I think one that's in immaculate conditions now worth like $700. So I grabbed it. And so it's also my daughter's favorite book. So she took that one. And then I was telling my used bookseller friend about it. And he goes, I've got a copy of it. So I have 2.
Right.
And I'm telling you, if you ever get a chance and you're in Chanute, Kansas, go to the Martin and Osa Johnson Safari Museum, because it tells the story of this little Kansas girl.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And I really wish, I've been telling all my author friends, if you ever want to do a book about somebody, do it on Osa Johnson. She was just a little girl, but she was an adventurer like you.
Right. Right.
And I am so in love. So what is in the works next now, Mary? What are you working on now that, you know, I'm going to post this everywhere, but what's your next journey?
Well, I wish I had another tiger book up my sleeves, but I don't really know what the next thing will be. Maybe it'll be about COVID. I have been for a long time working on a book about, it's called Continuous Bloom, What the Garden Taught Me About Being a Writer. And it's not about a journey, but I'm a bit of an amateur gardener at home. I don't like to be home very much, but I love my family. But you know, if I'm home,
I'm in the dirt. Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing I learned from gardening is that you can take anything out, you can cut anything back, and you can move anything around, which is what writers need to learn. So it's sort of a book about process. And you were asking me if I was thinking about a book about process. So I can tell you're thinking. I like it. I like your eyes when you're thinking.
I've already got an idea. I'm going to throw at you. You know, Bird by Bird, Annie Lamott, you know, Stephen King on writing. You need to write a book on this story of your writing process. I would so read your book.
You know, I'm really, really thinking about, and thank you for those reminders, because I hold them as templates. And I'd forgotten about the Stephen King, but I should get my hands on that one. And so I'm thinking, I have a lot of thoughts, kind of philosophical thoughts about writing. So there's that. And then this other book is, I mentioned to you that I'm living in this cabin that's owned by this Jamaican family who lives in Portugal.
How big is the cabin? How big?
What?
How big is the cabin?
Oh, the cabin, it's beautiful. It's right on a lake. It's 3 bedrooms, but everything faces, it's all picture windows that face the lake. Mm-hmm. And I have, on the far end, I have a room where I work. My husband works in another room on the far end. We're all remote. All of our daughter is remote also. She's on maternity leave, but she will be remote very soon. So it's a great place to work. it's really isolating, and I feel lonely a lot, which is why I'm really thrilled to be doing this with you and to doing
Me
these programs.
too. Me too.
Connect, it is our way of connecting right now, and connection, E.M. Forster, I mean, only connect. The levels of connection are so important. But anyway, the other thing I'm working on, which is, it may be the death of me, it's another historical novel. So this will be my third historical novel. And this one is about the Spanish Inquisition and the Jews of Jamaica and the family of Christopher Columbus.
Oh, that's a
Yeah.
hot little button right now. I mean, Columbus Day was so interesting this year.
Yeah.
Oh, because the interesting thing that's happening in this world right now is that all the history that hasn't been told, because it was either been told by the victor or the one in highest power, is now we're getting stories being told from the other side of the story.
Right.
That I would love to read that. So
right.
Trips to Portugal, Italy. I mean, you got a great place to do some research.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of research to do. And also I have to say it has quite a bit to do with slavery. And it's called Lady Crystal, and it begins the young girl putting perfume on from a perfume bottle that was found in the coffin of a slave. And that's actually a historical, there was a perfume bottle in Jamaica found in the coffin of a slave. But then I try to understand, where did that bottle come from? And it's the story of the perfume bottle, essentially. That's why it's called Lady
gosh,
Crystal.
I love that, because our senses, like scent and smell, I was just talking about this morning, bring floods of memories.
Right.
And I love it when people incorporate that in stories.
Right.
All the senses are explored: taste, smell, hearing, sound, touch. Right. Oh, man, I want to hang out with you.
Yeah, come on to the woods here.
I love it. I'm telling you, I have an FJ Cruiser, and when this all opens up, I'm hitting the road. I drove all the way up to New Jersey to deliver a painting, and I never had more fun with one of my best friends, my Pulpwood Queen, Tawana Anderson Neal, and it's a trip that really opened my eyes to the world, because I'd never been. I drove through New York City twice. Oh my God. And I used to be a book rep, so I used to go up there for 17 days at a time, but I never drove. I was so scared. And it was easy. It wasn't hard at all.
I'm afraid to drive in New York, and I drive all over up here.
No, it was fine. She kept saying, calm down, calm down. I go, oh my God, I can't believe I'm driving. I didn't know we were going to have to drive right through New York we were going up to Connecticut to visit my author friend, Prill Boyle, who she wanted me to come up there. And I did pop-up art, book, and fashion shows.
Cool.
Up and down. And it was the best trip ever. Right. I'm going to talk about it in my next book. But anyway, I love your ideas. I am immediately, when I get off of here, I'm going onto your website, and when I buy it from your website, does it go to a bookseller, or where does it go to?
Well, there's lots of, so, I mean, I need to update some of that. It'll go to Amazon, it'll go to Indie, it'll go to I'm not sure if Bookshop is on there, but I need to update.
Well, I can go to Bookshop. I want to help. I used to have an independent bookstore, so I know how much the Strand and, and Powell's Books and all these bookstores are struggling right now. Right. If everybody would just go online and buy their next book from an independent, it would
buy from the Strand, buy from wherever, they'll ship to you. Please support independence.
Absolutely.
If the Strand goes out of business, if these independent bookstores go out of business, and may I just say something? I think you would like my book, Gateway to the Moon, because it's about the secret Jews of New Mexico and the history of New Mexico, and it's a really interesting Southwest story. So
I had no idea. I will definitely. I want to read all your books.
That's great.
You've told me, and I have a really big mouth when it comes to things that I love. If I go down these rabbit holes, And people are just so sick of me talking about Bollywood, but the best storytelling in the world is in these Indian films. I'm just blown away, because just when I think I've got it figured out or it's over, they shock me and it goes on for another hour or two. It really, between reading and films, that's why I started the Pulpwood Queen Film Club. And that's why we need to make this a movie. If we made this a movie, who would play you? Who would play you?
Who would play me now?
Helen Mirren. Helen Mirren.
Yes, Helen Mirren. I'm all for that. I love it. Perfect. That's casting. That's done.
Well, I should have been a cast director, because I just love, I've always told people that I sold my book to film to DreamWorks. And
oh, cool. Amazing.
Well, DreamWorks is sold. It's, it's been years, but I've told everybody, I go, well, I can only think of two people that would do justice to playing me. And I go, one I pick because she's exactly the same age now as I was when I started this. And that's Drew Barrymore, because she's fearless. But actually, if anybody could play me now, I'm thinking Meryl Streep, man. It doesn't get
you're totally Meryl Streep. Kathy, I'm Helen Mirren and you're Meryl Streep.
Okay.
Perfect. It's perfect.
We've got it all figured out.
That's a done deal.
Well, I'm going to, with this Pulpwood Queen Film Club, I'm going to be doing one Saturday night. I'm actually doing a pre-show of Tippi Hedren's Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, because that's one of my favorite childhood films. That tells you a lot about me. But she was the very first book that I ever bought, was signed by the cats of Shambhala. And, she had all the big cats, and she signed my book in California. It was the very first book. I never even knew such a thing existed when I moved. I worked for Elizabeth Arden when I was working in San Diego and May Company, and as the cosmetics manager. And that's when I discovered author events at bookstores. Never heard of such a thing. We didn't have that in Kansas. Now we do. So I'm going to say to the world that's listening on my YouTube channel, Helen Mirren would be perfect to play this role. So maybe you could put into your writing repertoire a screenplay.
I don't know if I should say this or not, but my daughter and I we're screenwriting partners, and we've just finished a screenplay together that's going out today, in fact. So.
Are you kidding me?
No, she's an amazing writer. I mean, it's funny, my daughter and I we're actually not very different. Our work ethics are quite different. I mean, there are things about us that are very different, but creatively, we've done several projects together. And she's a head of creative content at Vimeo. So she's very much involved in that world.
Oh my gosh. Well, if there's any endorsement that I can give for whatever it's worth, I will make you a Pulpwood Queen Book Club selection author. I'll send you my stamp of approval. I will be so behind this. It's not even funny. So thank you, Carolyn Leavitt, for introducing me to Mary Morris. Last words, Mary. You have so many wonderful quotes and different things like you did in your books and shared with us today. Is there anything you'd like to share with the listening audience on being an author that you found is probably, the thing that gets you jumping out of bed every morning?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I remember reading once that Hemingway would leave a sentence unfinished so that he would jump out of bed to have to finish it the next day. I don't think I ever jump out of bed. I always am a little.
I might trip and fall. Yeah.
I'm a little slow on that, but I think that what people don't understand about being a writer is inspiration is kind of garbage, right? That it's important to have ideas, but really being a writer is a job. And you have to be very patient with yourself. As Rilke says it in Letters to a Young Poet, he says, patience is everything, gestation is all. And we have to give ourselves time for creative work. And also not be afraid. Like, it's one of the things about what the garden taught me. Like, sometimes I'll think that has to go there, but then it's like, no, it doesn't have to go there. It's not happy there. I need to put it more in the shade, or I need to put it more in the sun. It'll be happier. And just not to be afraid that, your work is not set in stone, and to be very patient with yourself. Be very patient. As Beckett said, fail better.
One of the things that right before I wake up in the morning, I solve my biggest problems. I have these epiphanies, and I immediately jump up and write them down because I figure things out. Do you find that when you're, asleep, do you figure things out? Is that something that, I wonder if it's just me,
Well, here's the problem. I don't really sleep.
Well,
so
I don't much either.
I love to sleep. So I used to have incredible dreams, and I would solve incredible problems in my sleep. And I think some of them are in the book, like my dream of tigers when I was a little girl. But I had a dream that made me want to become a writer. I had a dream about my husband before I met him that was a very, very bizarre, that I'd written about, that was in the New York Times as a modern love column. And it's called Premonitions by Marion.
Really? Do you have a link to that column? I'd love to read it.
I can certainly send it to you, or if you just Google Modern Love Mary Morris, it'll come up, and it's the story of how I dreamt my husband. So I don't even know how I got onto this whole dreaming thing. Oh, but because I can't sleep anymore, I have to take something to sleep, and I don't like it because I don't dream as well. But otherwise, I'll just be awake. So I'm open to suggestions. Anyone who wants to email me with their best sleeping suggestions,
I find the best sleep I have is during the day, because at night my mind is wandering too much. So,
right.
But I've also found that if I take a nap during the day, then I don't sleep at all at night. So it's, I just have to go back and forth on how to do it. But that's interesting, because the older I get, people go, do you ever sleep? And I go, not much, because I feel like my time is limited on this planet, because I just turned 64, and I have so much I want to do.
Right.
And every day is a gift. Like, this is such a gift, what you've just told all of us today, that I'm going to rewatch it as soon as this is over, so I can really let it absorb. It takes me 5 times to actually really work it in and truly understand it. So I'll watch movies over and over. I never get rid of a book that I love, because I go back and read them. I will go back and read this before it's a book club selection, because the first time you read it, you're just so caught at your paging. Then you go back and you really look at, all the aspects of the storytelling. The fact that your book is a tiger, I will go back and read this with that in mind. And the color pages thing, I have to tell you, I think I'm going to take that idea, because it is hard to keep track of, with my first book that came out, which is the story of how books saved me, really did. My parents were at war with each other, and us kids got caught in between, and it was not pretty growing up, and nobody knew it. And so I wrote this book, and it's everybody thinks it's a humor book. It's not. It comes from a very serious place, but it's filled with book lists. And my next book is going to continue the book club selections from the time it was published to today, because to me, a good book is a good book no matter when it was written. And that's what I try to tell publishers, and that's what my publisher that I'm working for now, as a director of acquisitions, we feel that a good book is a good book no matter when it's written, like To Kill a Mockingbird, or All the Way to the Tigers, So I want to include these books in there, because that's why the Texas Library Association endorsed my book and had me come as a keynote speaker, because it's all about our libraries, our teachers. I mean, what you just gave us in this interview, I hope will be spurring you onto this TED Talk, because I will be the first one to sign up to hear you in a TED Talk. I can tell you that for a fact, and I hope everybody listening will do that too. So go to www.marymorris.net to read more about Mary and her books. And also, this will be up on my Kathy L. Murphy YouTube channel later today. We are actually going to share it tonight at our Pulpwood Queen online book club.
Wonderful.
Because I know you're not going to be down till next year, but you know, I don't want anybody to miss this. And so those links will be posted. And I just really excited about the screenplay. Can you tell us anything about it or no? No. Okay. That's all right.
Probably shouldn't. I think my daughter has sworn me to secrecy.
And you know, there's good reason for that, because I had one of my best ideas taken and made into a film, and which kind of coincides with my next book, because I told everybody my next book was The Pulpwood Queen Goes Back to School, because I went through a divorce, and you know, 25 years, it was the toughest thing I've ever been through. And then my father fell and had brain surgery and went into hospice. So I lost my father. And, you know, I thought, is this it? Is this the end of me? You know, I'm in my 60s now. I could just cry thinking about it. I thought, it's my birthday. What am I going to do about it? And I drove to the University of Texas, and I went into admissions, and I go, I want to be in school. It started the next day.
That is a great story. That's fantastic.
And that's the story of how I changed I became proactive, and I became the strong woman and the fierce woman that I am today, because I went back to college, and the guy goes, no, it doesn't work that way. You have to send all your transcripts. Done. I've sent you 6 universities' transcripts. That, you know, that they had thrown them away because I didn't enroll that semester. I sent them. But he waived that. The guy waived it for me, because I said, I'm not leaving today, because I had to sell my shop. I had to sell my home. I had to leave with my car and my clothes and start over at 59. You know, it's my birthday, and I'm not leaving here, man. You get me in school. And 8 o'clock the next morning, I was in Introduction to Printmaking.
Awesome, Kathy. Awesome.
Well, you know, and that's what, just like you said, Mary, we lead by example. Your daughter is a screenwriter today because, you know, we don't think people are paying attention to us. But my 2 daughters are like strong, and they are great writers and big readers. And I don't think there's anything they can't champion. And I think that's, so in everything I do, I try to do like you said, make it important, you know, pay it forward, be a mentor. I'm learning now about coaching from Jay Shetty, because he's a big podcaster that I just adore. I'm watching these TED Talks. I'm educating myself, and my whole book is about being a lifelong learner. So read Mary Morris's books. And I look forward to everything I see on your marymorris.net website. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Kathy. This was great. I totally can't wait to see Meryl Streep playing you and Helen Mirren playing me. I think this is, or let us play each other ourselves.
I don't, well, I have done acting. I played Truvy in Steel Magnolias, but I never left the stage, and I had to do hair the entire time. And I said, okay, I can't do this anymore. I was working full time. But
thank you so much, Kathy. Really, I really appreciate your enthusiasm, your positivity, your love of tigers. I'm sorry. Okay.
I want to invite you, and you don't have to tell me today, but we're going to do an online Zoomathon Girlfriend Weekend this year, because we can't meet in person. And I want to make you a keynote speaker, because what you said today was so profound and so important. I want all the girls that are coming from all over the country online to do this, to hear you speak. So think about that. It's always held Martin Luther King weekend, and we're going to do Zoom Zoomathon. So we'll schedule things every hour. I'm going to have panels. I'm going to have bloggers. I'm going to have the, all these wonderful people on board. Carolyn Leavitt's going to be there. But I would love to have you. I mean,
I would be honored. I commit. Yes, I would be honored.
Oh, I'm doing the happy hand dance. Well, as soon as this gets recorded, believe it or not, I will get this up today and I will share it. If you want to join us tonight on the Pulpwood Queen online book club, if you want to jump in, I hate to have you come back to the realtor or wherever you're at, but it's all of these things are recorded and put on my channel. So if you can't, you can watch them at your leisure. But we're going to be celebrating you all day into tonight's book club. And thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I could pop on tonight if you send me a link, okay?
I will send it to you as soon as we're done.
Perfect.
And I'm going to end with my favorite goodbye right now, Firmalinge. So I'm learning these languages and you've inspired me to learn some more. So thank you, Marion Morris. Thank you, Carolyn Leavitt. Everybody have a wonderful reading day.
Thank you.
It's all about the story. See you tonight at the Pulpwood Academy. Bye, everybody. Bye, Mary. I love you.
Thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.